Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so they usually flower in May and June, so it's 50 strips of stock. Yeah.
Okay, today we're going to be talking about the berries. Quite a few berries we can grow. Well, pretty much all the berries, except for a few, we can grow in the area. Now, the number one favorite berry, because it takes the least amount of room, would have to be the strawberry. So these strawberry plants here, and the nice thing about strawberries that we sell, is that they'll have fruit within 2 to 3 months. So very fast to bear, and they'll have their full crop the first year. And that's mainly because these plants aren't baby plants. Well, they are kind of babies, but they're not grown from seed. If we grow them from seed, they may not make berries till the second year, but these are offsets of the mother. So the way strawberry plants grow, and strawberries are native throughout the northern hemisphere. So North America, Asia and Eurasia, and also interestingly down the west coast of South America. The strawberries native to Europe, so the Europeans ate what are called alpine or woodland strawberries, which are about as big as your fingernail. So they're very small berries. The way that strawberries got their size was that they were bred with strawberries from both Virginia and ones native to the west coast of the U.S. and or North America and South America, which are called the Chilean strawberries, and those were the big ones. They didn't have much flavor, but they were big. So they got all those three together, the Europeans, the Eastern North American, and the Western North American and South American strawberries together, and they developed the modern strawberry, which is a pretty big berry. And those were essentially developed in the 1800s. So the early and late 1800s, they developed the modern strawberry. So on strawberries, so besides the woodland strawberries, the modern strawberries, there are two categories, which are kind of muddy categories. There's something called spring or June bearing, and there's other ones called everbearing, but that's so similar to day neutral strawberries that no one makes much distinction nowadays. So we just call everbearing strawberries and June bearing or spring bearing strawberries. Among the strawberries I have in stock, these Eversweet strawberries are considered everbearing, and the Chandlers are considered June bearing. The only reason you would choose one or the other, the spring bearing or June bearing strawberries make all their berries generally for the year in a shorter amount of time. They'll do it in like 4 months. Whereas the everbearing strawberries will kind of do it throughout the year, but at a lower rate. So one strawberry plant can make about 1 quart of berries over the year. And so the everbearing are spread out over a longer period. Now most strawberries, including the everbearings, don't produce flowers when it's really hot. So like July, August, they may not produce any flowers. But when it cools off a little bit, the everbearing get going again. The June bearing usually wait till mid-fall or so before they start bearing fruit again. So there's differences there. So the number of strawberry plants, usually one plant, I've grown them for quite a few years, so one plant per week at peak season, 2 to 3 berries a week per plant. So if you want more than 2 or 3 berries a week, then you have to plant more plants. I had 10 plants at one time, real good bearing, pretty much good for a family of 2. So that was pretty good. Okay, now you'll notice you probably noticed that in Orange County they grow a lot of strawberries. In fact, some of my relatives back in the 60s grew strawberries. Up until marijuana has been grown, strawberries were the most valuable crop in Orange County per square foot. So my relatives made a lot of money back in the 60s. They don't do it anymore. I guess they made enough money. But you'll notice that they plant strawberries here in October. They get their fields ready by the end of September, planting in October. They go for the winter crop. So California, among all the places in the U.S., is the only place that you can grow strawberries and harvest them December and January. Florida just gets too cold. Florida, if you've ever been there in the middle of winter, they'll have these couple of weeks of, say, 15 degrees or so, which just freezes everything. So the strawberry crop kicks in more like February, March. But the Southern California crop, Orange County, Ventura County, San Diego County, we get our strawberries in the market by December. So they plant them October, get them December. Now, if you grow strawberries in your yard, you'll notice that if you have them year after year, they don't start producing until about March or April. So what they have to do in the fields in Orange County is they get their strawberry plants. They buy new ones every year from a nursery up in the Sierra foothills. So up there, they've already got 30-degree weather, 20-degree weather. They've got the winter chill really well before they get the berries down here. They also put them in refrigerators on storage also. So they sell bare root strawberries. Now, bare root strawberry, these probably were bare root strawberries, because the growers up north sell them to the farms down here in big boxes full of plants that look like this. So this is they dig them out of the ground up north, wash all the dirt off the roots, and then put them in big boxes. Now you can see that this is kind of big to fit in here, so they really got to clip those roots to get them into the little 6-packs like this. But we sell bare root strawberries usually November to now. I don't know if I can get any more this year. We'll check with some of the growers, see if they have any more. But these are like 69 cents a piece, although they range. This one is 69 cents. We've gotten up to about $1 a piece, but still a pretty good buy for something with this size to it versus that size. You see, it's a much, much larger plant. So even though these are a few weeks behind getting the leaves out, they're way ahead in strength-wise. They'll make good berries right off the bat. Now this week, someone really bought a lot of strawberries this week, so I've only got about 20, maybe a dozen or 20 left of these. But we'll see if we can get more in the coming weeks. So in the fields, you'll notice that on strawberries, some fields they cover them in black plastic, and some fields are covered in clear plastic. So the conventional farmers are the ones that are doing clear plastic, and the organic farmers are using black. And the reason for that is that they want to keep the berries clean, so they cover the soil below them with plastic, but it also heats up the soil. Now, black plastic does not heat up the soil as much as clear plastic does. The black plastic itself gets really hot, but it doesn't let anything through, so it just kind of, the plastic itself is hot. Clear plastic lets the light through and then traps the heat underneath it, so it gets much hotter underneath there. So the clear plastic ones usually go on faster, but if you ever put clear plastic on the ground and try to grow anything, and we've had customers try to do that, all you get is weeds. It becomes the greenhouse underneath there, and the weeds just really thrive underneath that plastic. So what the farmers that use clear plastic are doing is they're fumigating their fields before they plant. So strawberry fields make berms like this, and walking paths and berms like this, and they cover them with that clear plastic, and they put gas underneath it that excludes all the oxygen for a few days, and it just they put, I'm not sure what chemicals using now, chlorpictin or one of those fumigants, but they put it underneath there and it kills everything. Kills the weed seeds, the weeds, the bugs, most diseases are wiped out. So it sterilizes everything, and then they cut the plastic, and the plastic will fall and cover the edge of that berm, keep the rain from knocking it down. And they'll plant berries. They've got machines that spike holes in the ground through the plastic, and they drop that bare strawberry in there, and then it grows on top of the plastic like that. Some growers do 2 rows on each side of the irrigation furrow. Some growers do 1 row on each side. I think the standard now is to put 2 rows of strawberries on each side of the irrigation furrow, and they space them about 18 inches apart in the field. Of course, they've got plenty of room. You can go as anywhere from 18 inches down to 6 inches. So put down between plants. But if you've ever grown strawberries in sandy soil, which most growers have, those plants grow close to 2 foot wide. So they get really good size if you've got good conditions for them. Strawberries was one of the first things we ever did back in the early 90s when we were testing how good potting soils were. That was our first test plant, because we wanted to see what was wrong with the potting soils in those days. So we did a strawberry plant in what was called Whitney Farms potting soil, and most of them grew about this big. And then we grew strawberries in pure sand, and the plants were like this big. So we know there's something wrong with the potting soils that are being sold, and that was our first test case. And from then on, we started making our own potting soil, because we couldn't believe that they didn't notice how small the plants are growing in their soil. We just still can't believe it to this day why the people who make those potting soils believe that they're doing a good job for us. So we can grow our own strawberries now in our acid mix potting soil, which is peat moss and volcanic rock. Sand works really well. It's just heavy to carry, and we don't think that anyone will buy a bag of sand instead of potting soil, because it looks so different. So we made our own soil that acts like sand, even though it's not real well. The volcanic rock in here is the same material as sand is. It's quartz. But if you ever want to see a strawberry do its thing, let them go in a sandbox. I mean, back in the 80s, I bought a house and I had a sandbox back there, and when my strawberries got into it, without irrigating, without doing anything, the strawberries took over that sandbox. They just love that thing. So they love sand. That's in nature, they grow by riverbeds. So, but our acid mix is a lot lighter.
Do they grow in dunes too, like coastal dunes and stuff?
Yes, yeah. And there are strawberries that go up and down the coast, generally, when you plant strawberries, you have to keep them really wet. They do like a lot of water. They like good drainage. Now, in the best soils in Orange County, they still raise these things 18 inches. When you raise it above grade 18 inches, even the sandy soil that they normally use drains really well, and the strawberries do better. But strawberries are grown in clay too, so the central coast of California, where most of California's strawberry industry is, say between Santa Barbara and San Francisco, the majority of and there's some above San Francisco all the way up the coast to Oregon. A lot of those areas are like Fountain Valley, they're clay, really dense clay, because the rivers dump the clay out at the end of the river. So what they do is they're raised up 3 feet. So we've seen videos of kids running through those fields. You just see the tops of their heads bobbing up and down as they run through the strawberry fields in Monterey area. Now, I haven't ever walked through one of those myself, but that's what they do to get the drainage good enough for their strawberries, raise them 3 feet.
Wow.
So it's gonna be better for picking though,
Oh yeah, right here.
Yeah.
So anything will drain if you raise it high enough. Quite well. Generally, what they do in the fields is the first set of flowers that the strawberry plants produce, they just pinch them off. because this plant's so small, with those little leaves like that, it can't make a big berry. And so it's just a waste of time to get that first crop off. So you pinch the first set of flowers, and then the leaves get going. After a few weeks of growth, they got full-size leaves. The second set of flowers, just leave them on there, and then away you go. You got your berries on that second set. And they can get, you can certainly get strawberries bigger than that if you do a good job with your strawberries. So the growers in Orange County generally pull out their plants, toss them in June or whenever it gets real hot and the berry production slows down, and then they start all over again in the fall. Now the ones that do organic have to rotate the crops. They can't grow the same plant, the same soil. One of our friends who's growing strawberries says they have a 10 crop rotation cycle. So they grow strawberries, they grow 10 other crops unrelated, then they grow strawberries again. Strawberries is their main money maker on the farm. So and a lot of the crops that they grow in between, the only reason they grow them is to get the crop rotations in. Like they grow cabbage, they don't make any money on cabbage, it just kind of helps them do the rotations properly. So a lot of those crops are being grown just so they can get back to strawberries. Remember that now, you can always get new potting soil, get new soil, turn over the soil really deeply. But if you grow strawberries in the same soil twice, they're not as good the second time. Now, in the Central Coast, they don't replant every year because the market isn't the early market. So here, because they use pre-chilled strawberries, and we've got warm winter conditions, they can get their crop up and get that early winter market. Central Coast, they're banking on the spring through summer market, and so they leave the plants in the ground for 3 years, 2 to 3 years, the same plants, and their strawberry plants start producing around April. So they have to they go through their winter and then start production. And if you kept your strawberry plants in the ground year after year, you get production generally from about April through, all of them will produce through July or August, into early August. Then that's when the spring bearers stop production. The everbearers kind of keep going the rest of the year. Yes.
What makes the strawberry have good flavor? I've picked a couple of strawberries before, look pretty, they're nice and red, but there's just like no flavor.
Well, flavor is usually due to sunlight, and sunlight the days, the week before they're ripe. They say that with almost any fruit. The week before they're picked, if you have enough sunlight, you're good. Now, one of the things that also messes them up apparently is too much rainwater. Makes them swell up, and they just get a little with water, and they're not as flavorful because it's diluted a bit. So they said, don't buy strawberries right after a series of rainstorms. They'll be pretty bland, juicy. Strawberries are also the fruit is kind of delicate, so if it rains, a lot of your strawberries rot that are almost ripe. When they're almost ripe, they rot easy. Before that, no problem. So the strawberry farmers, usually if they have a good rainstorm, they're not, they're picking and throwing away strawberries for a few days before they start picking and sending to the market again. The strawberries are one of the most perishable crops you can get. The strawberries we have now generally are much better than the ones we used to have. So, say before 1980, you have to go out and pick strawberries daily because they wouldn't last on the plant more than a few days without getting mushy and start deteriorating. Now they got strawberries that'll hang on a week, so without deteriorating. So unfortunately, some of those strawberries, you buy them at the store and they're crunchy. But even those, the crunchy ones, if you were to grow them at your own house, the same varieties, and let them ripen until it's soft, they're pretty darn good. But they've got some that turn red well before they start deteriorating, so they look good, even though they're not quite ripe yet.
Do they fertilize them with anything?
They do. I forgot to do my fertilizers up here. The University of California has done a lot of strawberry research over there, and they always told us that they use Osmocote 14, 14, 14, which we do sell. So they use the chemical fertilizer with that numbers. I don't know, we use almost anything on them. In fact, we often, instead of using 14, 14, 14, use Osmocote, what is it, 15, 9, 12, which to us makes more sense than a 14, 14, 14, but that's what they used for their research purposes. At that time, that was the only choice in Osmocote was 14, 14, 14. Now they make numbers that are more accurate. 15, 9, 12, I think is more accurate for plants than 14, 14, 14. And certainly, in the long run, organics are better. Short run, it doesn't really matter too much, but in the long run, we prefer using organic fertilizers.
You just put it on in the beginning and then you don't have to worry about it?
You have to keep fertilizing them. Now this Osmocote, this last 4 months, this last 6 months, most organic fertilizers you do weekly. Monthly. Monthly or seasonally, it depends how much you put on. And it depends what kind you use. Like the farms generally use, now the farm we were next to is an organic farm, and they fertilize at least monthly, but they have to use liquids because everything's done through the irrigation system. They don't go hand throwing out fertilizer, they just go, and they use really smelly, sewage smelling stuff, fermented organic material that they send through their irrigation water. So you can tell whenever they're fertilizing, it stinks. So now strawberries have a few pests. They are subject to leaf fungus, but generally we don't treat for it. So you just walk, like we see them out in the fields, everyone's carrying a little bucket and they just go through the rows of strawberries, and they see a leaf that's got a spot forming on it, they just pick it off, throw it in their bucket. So that's how they do it organically, just pick off anything that looks spotted. And the strawberries that might be moldy, you pick those off and throw in your bucket too. So everybody carries buckets on an organic strawberry farm just to eliminate disease and problems and stuff with buckets. Now they can get, the major insect they get are spider mites, which are little tiny spiders that will get on the leaves. Spider mites, once you know what you're looking for, it's little white spots on the leaves. Because what a spider mite does is, it's real tiny, it sucks on one cell in the leaf at a time. So like what real big spiders do is they will catch a bug, inject their toxin into the bug's body, which liquefies the contents, and then they suck it out. On a plant leaf, they do the same thing to each cell. They pierce the cell, inject their toxin, liquefies the cell, and then they suck that out, and you have a white appearing cell on your leaf. And they do that over and over and over, and your leaf starts looking like it's gray green. It does shut down the plant, so now and then we'll see the farms with their booms going over the field spraying with an oil spray. So they use horticultural oil, so it's a mineral oil type thing that coats the bugs. They can't breathe for 10 minutes, they're dead. The oil evaporates, it doesn't leave any residue. They can use that on an organic farm. There are vegetables that are used, like neem oil, and then there are minerals that are used, and they're all considered fine for organic farming. So that's the main bug we get is spider mites. Now there's other bugs what's it called? Lygus bug. That'll sit on the young berries and pierce them and suck on them, and it makes the berry come out all funny shaped. They call that cat facing of the strawberries. I don't know if there's a organic method of controlling that guy. Cat facing. So it makes it real warped looking on the surface, real ugly strawberries. The other thing that happens too, if you grow strawberries in the dirt and you don't fumigate, you have all your critters walking around, so snails, slugs, pill bugs often start eating the berries right as they're ripening, not before, just right when you want to pick them. Like the day you want to pick them, there's a hole in there with a slug or a pill bug sitting in the hole. So now you can help prevent that. Pill bugs don't climb too well, so the strawberries form on little stems. They form on stems clusters of 3 to 5 strawberries in a cluster and sometimes the stems are pretty long. So we've taken each stem and just placed it in a party glass or a bathroom cup. And generally the pill bugs and slug and snail don't recognize that it's a plant, and so they don't climb in there and eat your berries. So that's one way to stop that, or Sunset Magazine recommended placing them on smooth pebbles, because those critters don't think of a pebble as being something to eat, so they don't tend to climb up. The other product we have now that's pretty nice is this Monterey Ant Control, which has both spinosad for killing pill bugs and iron phosphate for killing snails and slugs. So this says ant control, but it says on the label will kill ants plus earwigs, cutworms, sow bugs, pill bugs, cricket slugs, and snails. So almost all the creepy crawlies that are in your garden that do damage, this will help control. This is registered for organic farming. So a new product that just came out. We haven't tested it yet, but there has been another product on the shelf with the same ingredients in it that was labeled for snails, slugs, pill bugs, earwigs, cutworms. Same ingredients, so we figure this will work good. Now, what strawberry plants do during the year? So what you want them to do is all spring just make leaves. The leaves are usually in threes, and they're flowers with fruit on the end of it.
Gary, I had a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do red ants bite? Scout wants to know. She wanted to know why red ants bite.
I think any ant can actually bite. Some ants are just too small to bite you because your fingers are too big, but the red ants have big enough jaws. But even the little tiny ants, I've been bitten by those too, if you play with them enough.
Oh, yeah.
I used to play with ants when I was a kid. I used to get stung now and then. But the red ants certainly are one of the more aggressive ones, but a lot of ants can bite. I've been bitten by the big black ones and the little native fire ants, the California native ones, which are small. Okay, so strawberries, most of them make leaves and flowers and berries all winter and spring. And then summer, what they do is they send up these long runners that make new plants. And these runners make roots also. And then these are the ones that the growers send. So these plants are then the next winter pulled out of the ground, dirt washed off, put in boxes, put in refrigerators, sent to the farms to plant and grow. So the runner plants will produce in their second year. And those are clones, exact genetic copies of the mother plant. So most strawberry plants in the field are all exactly the same plant. I don't know how many years it takes to clone enough of those to fill a field, but there's a lot.
So like, if you just have this big strawberry patch that you let just kind of go, I mean, it'll do its thing, but because the soil will get robbed of certain nutrients, the berries won't be as good year after year. So it's better to like take your runners out and put them somewhere else, like to rotate.
You haven't taken my soil class yet. Okay. They don't rob the soil of anything you can't put back. So if you just ground the strawberry plant and left it there, the same nutrients are still there. You're not taking that much away. So what strawberry plants and any plant does in a farm is they create dead roots of themselves over time. And what that does is it poisons the soil for any strawberry plant they want to grow there again. You can grow anything else, but you can't grow a strawberry plant in that one patch because there's too many dead roots, strawberry
I
roots
see.
now.
Gotcha.
And it, you know, takes 3 years or so to get those roots out of there. But all you have to do, so if you have one plant in your group that's not producing well because it's getting old, you dig that plant out, dig out a bunch of dirt, maybe several handfuls of dirt, and put fresh dirt back in there from another part of your yard or some of our potting soil into there. So it's essentially virgin soil again, and that revives. In fact, you can keep that plant, it'll revive it just by having new dirt around it. Although it's probably just worth starting off with the fresh ones again, or the newer, younger ones. So like, we have a strawberry pot out front that we've had going for 5 or 6 years now, but every now and then one plant will give up. We'll just dig that plant out, put in a couple handfuls of new potting soil, put a new plant back in its place, and away we go for another, and that, you know, we just keep it going that way.
Get rid of that
Do
rock.
they plow in the cabbage that they grow over the winter as a nutrient for the soil?
Not usually.
Not usually.
Most crops, once they're done, they, you know, we're next to that organic farm for 3 years, and they have those huge, you know, 40-foot long by 10-foot tall trash bins that they're always filling up every few weeks with all the,
They compost that.
I don't know where it goes. This farm wasn't doing any composting. They would buy in once a year. They would buy in stuff from the nearby compost company and spread it over the field. You know, about that much, and dig that in once a year. Okay, so the varieties of strawberries out there. So right now we have, right here. So we've got Chandler, which is still one of the top spring bearers out there. So this is spring bearing. Sometimes we carry Sequoia, and I think Sequoia is kind of in betweener. It's generally called spring bearing, but I know some books say it's ever bearing, so it's not definite. The ever bearers we usually have, that's ever sweet. I haven't grown that one before, but Albion, that's certainly been real popular. Seascape are what the bare root ones we have right now are, and that's certainly been a good one over the years. And there's a few others. Hopefully this spring we'll get in some sweet Anns. I heard sweet Ann is right now considered the top strawberry. Albion has been the top strawberry for growing and eating for the last 5 or 6 years. Sweet Ann is supposed to be an improved version of it, but we haven't grown enough to swear by it yet. But the strawberry farms are telling us this is the one. So we'll see what happens with that one. That's supposed to be everbearing too. We'll see if we can get bare root on that in the next few weeks. Any questions on strawberries?
What about pine berries?
The white ones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a white pineberry that's a type of woodland strawberry. Now these don't make runners, just so you know. Well, they do, but they make clumps. They don't have any runners that come out, but they just multiply in a small area, and they are grown usually from seed. So, you know, you can do this. I mean, if you took a strawberry and let it dry, shrink down and dry, and then they say this is the method they tell you, take a credit card and kind of scrape off the seeds, and you can grow those. And I have done that, grown strawberries from seeds. Generally the big strawberries are all hybrids, which means their babies will be all over the place as far as quality and shape and size and all that. Whereas the woodland strawberries, and like the pine berries, are always almost grown from seed. So you just scrape off the seeds, plant them. I mean, the plants are really teeny at first. They're really tiny. But we've grown them and sold the plants and got berries off of those. So that's one way you do it. So yeah, most of these are red, but they do have yellow ones, they sometimes called pineapple, which do actually have somewhat of pineapple flavor, and then they have white ones.
Yeah. And purple.
Yes.
What determines the size of the strawberry that the plant is? Is it age of the plant or nutrients or?
Don't know. I mean, like the seascape strawberries, they say groups, spikes with 3 berries on it. They said the center berry is always the big one and the 2 side berries are medium. But most strawberries, the berries are fairly similar in size in that cluster. So I don't know. Now, among fruiting plants in general, the more fruit that's on a plant at one time, the smaller they'll be. The more water you give them, the bigger they'll be. But I don't know on strawberries if there's anything besides genetics that determines. I'm sure if they've got bigger leaves on them. I mean, if you have a real healthy plant, like these are so teeny still, is when we're growing them in pure sand, each leaflet was about that big, about 4 inches across. So if you got a really healthy strawberry plant, your leaflets on those leaves are that big. I remember reading Sunset magazine once. They said if you want to have an earlier crop on your strawberry plants, you pull the little runners off your plant, stick them in a plastic bag, stick them in the refrigerator for 2 weeks, then plant them, and they start blooming right away. I've not tried that. It's easier to buy new ones. Okay, I would have to say the next favorite berry we sell is blueberry. Blueberries are primarily native to North America, although they're close related berries all across Europe and Asia, but they're not called, in Europe they are called blueberries there too, but they're different species. But blueberries in North America are native from Alaska, east of the Rockies, all the way down to Florida. So that's the range. So of course we grow the ones that were created or selected in Florida. So that, because Florida has very short winter, although it's intense, it's very short, and we have a longer winter but mild, and everything from Florida so far has done well here. Now, a full-size blueberry plant, this is like a medium-sized blueberry plant. We sell them when they're about this big. So this would probably be a 2-year-old from cutting blueberry plant. Second year, maybe 1.5 years old. And this one is probably about 4 or 5 years old. But in a bigger container, they can get bigger. We had one earlier this year. We just delivered to someone's house in January. It was in a 25-gallon bucket. This is a 10-gallon. It was in a 25 or half barrel size container. And it was about 8 foot wide, about this much wider, and about a foot taller. And that thing would make easily 10 pounds of berries per year. Now, commercially, they get up close to 15, 16 pounds of berries per year. So what blueberries do is they grow new branches. You can see this branch here, this green branch here was made last summer. This branch here from the base of the plant was made last summer. And what they'll do this spring is this entire new branch will bloom all the way from top to bottom and make berries on it. The older branches, being shorter, have a shorter amount of berries that they're making. So the newer branches like this get quite impressive in the spring because it's just berries from bottom to top. And then the next year, it'll be berries from bottom to top here. And then as the branch gets older, the amount of berries it makes on each one gets shorter and shorter, although they can still make a lot. So with blueberries, they say about 5 years down the road, you start cutting out, I'd cut out this real old branch here. the oldest branch on here maybe, and then it'll have more room to send up more of these newer canes that can rejuvenate the plant. Maybe this whole structure here and this whole structure, take it out after it makes berries this year, make room for new stems to come up. So blueberries are pretty much bushes. They're woody plants. All the blueberries seem to need a little bit of cold in the winter to flower well and make fruit well. Everything from Florida so far has done well here, even though the literature says, like we sell South Moon blueberry, it says officially it needs 500 hours of chill. And we know that's a bunch of bull. The last 5 years we've had winters that were officially less than 100 hours of chill. And the Florida blueberries, like South Moon, just bloomed earlier. They just don't need much cold at all. They just need, you know, once it got some warm weather, they're just out there blooming and fruiting. So I would say 50 hours of chill, maybe, for all the Florida types. We just haven't had any problem with any of them producing huge crops through the winters we've had in the last 5 years. So this one is not a Florida blueberry, so it's behind. So this one is from Mississippi, and we don't carry this one. This is called Jubilee, and it seems to need at least 200, 300 hours of chill. We've had a few years where they wouldn't produce well at all. Maybe just a few berries on it. This year, this last month we've had, it seems like we picked up a couple hundred hours of chill in 1 month. So it looks like we'll have a good crop this year, but 2 years ago and 3 years ago, virtually no crop on this particular variety. So we don't like to push this one for our homeowners because it's not as reliable. Now this other blueberry here, which is younger, is from Florida, and it's already ripened. So this one had enough chill at the end of December, and it's got ripe fruit on it. This one, we put in one of the runt plants we had at the nursery, and it struggled for a little bit, but now it's getting going after a few years in this pot. It should be a lot bigger than this, but it was a runt when we took it home. We noticed that, and we do plant our blueberries in our acid mixed potting soil. They do like an acid soil. And usually for about 5 years, without any additional additions of acid, you can get by with our acid mix. But we noticed at our house, after about 5 years of growing them in the acid mix, you put something down in the soil, it's real acidic, and the plants look really good. They need that one small boost to get them more acid. And what we did last year, which made a big difference on our blueberries, we added some sulfate of ammonia fertilizer, or ammonium sulfate. We've read over the years that that's all the blueberry farmers ever do is they'll put on, what they say, about, they say 0.7 pounds of nitrogen per blueberry plant per year using sulfate ammonia, which would be less than a pound of it, I think, per plant. Like sulfate ammonia is 21% nitrogen. I'll have to figure that out. But we put it like a teaspoon in each plant. They really greened up nicely for us. So, now, so most blueberries, their main crop, and this one did start early this year because we had such a hot winter. Their main crop is usually April, heaviest, then it goes lighter into May, June, July. I mean, they don't seem to really have a, quote, real short season. They kind of keep going all the way through summer into fall lightly, but just lighter and lighter and lighter as we get through fall. So they get a real heavy crop April, May, or June, depending on the variety. And then it just kind of tapers off into through fall. So like this last year in December, I was going out, I had about 6 buckets in my backyard of blueberries like this size. I was still picking about a handful a day through November, and then December it got down to maybe 5 berries off of 6 plants per day. So we're still harvesting something. They never seem to be totally blank. One of our customers said that he has 20, now this is a 10-gallon pot, he had 20 15-gallon tubs in his back, on his back patio. And he says it was perfect for him. He kept his plants about 4 foot high, 3 foot wide. He says his grandkids wanted to come over every weekend and check them out because they knew that there was always blueberries on his plants. So, the one thing that blueberries need that we can't provide naturally is not only the acidic soil, but they need lots of water. So you don't let a blueberry plant dry out. If it dries out, it kind of looks like this one is half dormant. And sometimes it takes a year to get back to where it started. So that's one thing about blueberries, you cannot let them dry out. Yes?
I have a blueberry, and this is what some of the leaves look like.
Looks like it got dried out.
But, you know, I'm watering it, and my concern is my dog, he likes to pee on it. Yeah. And I don't know if he pees, you know, if his urine touches the openings on the bottom of the container, so I moved it so he can't pee on it.
Don't know, I'm not that much of an expert. I mean, you got brown edges on the leaves. That
Yes.
could be a salt burn from urine, I don't know. I've never seen,
I mean,
I've never seen what the damage is supposed to look like, so.
so what do you think I should, well, with all the rain and, I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
well, just lots of water.
Yeah,
And it's hard to hurt them by overwatering them.
okay, that's good.
What about I've had leaves turn like almost like they got burned by the sun real bad, like in the summer, like they'll turn almost like crispy brown, almost
Probably got a little dry.
too dry.
Yeah, blueberries are grown in Central Valley and down in, even near Indio. The heat doesn't bother them as long as they got enough water. Because Florida is not cool at all. In Florida, Central Florida, it's 95 degrees every day. So it's not the heat, but certainly water can do it.
So the Florida versions, do they ever lose all their leaves, or they just lose some and keep some? Or?
Okay, that's a good question. So we sell different blueberries, and different blueberries are different. So the blueberry plants that stay more evergreen than the others are seem to be the older varieties, Sharp Blue, Sunshine Blue, and Misty. All seem to stay more evergreen. And then a lot of the newer ones seem to be more deciduous. So we've got Star and South Moon, Jewel, Emerald. There's some other ones out there that we don't have access to. I think Monrovia sells a few that they've come up with, or they've renamed. Monrovia renames a lot of plants for their own purposes, so they might have taken one of these and renamed it, but I'm not sure. Anyway, these are some of the ones that we carry. They ripen a little at different times. So the earliest blueberry we see making fruit is Star first, Jewel second, South Moon third, and they're only a few weeks apart. Whoops. And then it's kind of like, they're all very close together. Those seem to all at the same time, then follow up last the Sunshine Blue of that group. We also have carried I think I still have one plant left in the nursery called Pink Lemonade, which is a pinkish rose-colored blueberry. That's dead last in production. This one doesn't usually ripen until summer. Now these are all called Southern Highbush blueberries. Those are blueberries native to Florida, Georgia, Mississippi. The Jubilee there was from Mississippi. Some nurseries sell O'Neill, and we used to think O'Neill would do well here until the last 10 years when it's really warmed up. So O'Neill we don't sell anymore, but O'Neill is supposed to be either the furthest furthest north of the southern highbush blueberries, because it came from New Jersey, or the furthest south of the northern highbush blueberries, which are native to the northern states. So we don't do O'Neill anymore, although that one, when we used to carry, we said that was the best flavored of them. Of this group, South Moon is considered the top flavor, although I've never had, a bad blueberry. They're all really good, so we don't worry too much about the flavor. But if you really want to know, when we've gone out to your yard and tasted all of them, usually South Moon is number 1, number 2 is Jewel. Those seem to be the best tasting. Now in the deep south, where they grow a lot of blueberries on farms, Star, Jewel, and Emerald are the big 3. South Moon has root rot problems, more susceptible to root rot. And every year, if we lose 1 or 2 plants, out of 300, 400 plants we bring in, we lose a few of them, it's always South Moon. So it tends to be a little bit weaker than the West, although the flavor on it is considered number 1. Pink lemonade is actually a rabbit eye hybrid. So rabbit eye blueberries tend to be very light colored, usually pink, like rabbit eyes, I guess. The one interesting about this one is that the birds don't figure it out for a while. So the birds are used to the blueberries going from green to pink to blue before they eat them. The pink lemonade, you pick them when it's pink. The birds is, it takes a long time for them to catch on that those things are ripe out there. So that's one good thing about the pink lemonade. Pink lemonade doesn't produce as heavy as the other blueberries. Now these blueberries, generally they like to be cross-pollinated. They want pollen from a different blueberry type, not just 2 plants the same kind. You need a different plant. Then they make more berries. It's about a third more if you've got more than one. The pink lemonade, there isn't anything we have that cross with it, so we just go with it by itself, unless you have another rabbit eye. But rabbit eyes are so weird that we don't carry them. We gave up on the rabbit eyes. If you don't have 2 varieties, you don't get any fruit at all. You definitely have to have a second plant. So there's not that many rabbit eyes that work in our zone, so I'd order them from my supplier, and then they'd send me 1. I'm going, well, this doesn't work. So we sit there a whole year with all these rabbit eyes and so the next year I had to order the pollinator, and never, we just gave up after years. It was just a joke. We couldn't get 2 that would pollinate each other at the same time from our suppliers, so we just gave up on that totally. Pink lemonade though does ripen itself, and it does have a slight lemony flavor to it. There's one out there somewhere. And I think I might have a few over here.
The size of the berries vary with the plant?
Most of the blueberries make, I would say, dime to nickel size on one plant. You'll get a range. Sunshine blue tends to be the smallest. I think the way that they're sized commercially is how many berries fit in a cup. So Sunshine Blue, I think it's around 80 or 90 berries per cup. Whereas the biggest one might be Misty at 50-something berries per cup. And now I don't know what happened, but I get berries from a different grower I used to. So I used to get them from a place in Michigan. And when I grew Misty from that company, they used to get the size from nickel size to quarter size, huge. But from my present supplier, they're nickel size at max. It says the same thing, but so I don't know what's going on there. If I got something totally different from Michigan from them, but most of them are dime to nickel size, all in the same plant. Like these are running small, because this plant is kind of weak. And this is a Misty, but if you have a real sturdy Misty, they'll get bigger than that.
I had somebody tell me to grow them in like perlite and peat moss, like combo, like.
Yeah, that's essentially what this is. Peat moss, 50%, and pumice rock, which doesn't float as bad as perlite does, but it's essentially the same thing.
And if they've been in that mix for like 10 years, it's time to like kind of change out them, like take them out of the pot and like put a new fresh
Well, yeah, they're getting a lot of dead root in there, so it's slowing them down. I mean, we've had them in the same containers for 7 years, looking really good. But generally, in container growing, plants are usually, the soil is redone about minimum every 10 years. If you want to keep the plant growing real nice. Like in bonsai, I used to be a bonsai artist, their rules in their books was, depending on the type of plant, between every 2 and 10 years, you pull the plant out of the pot, knock off half the dirt, replace with fresh dirt, put the plant back in, trim the plant so there's no shock. And that was the rules for potted plants. So.
Because even if you had like a kind of like a planter that you put a bunch of acidic soil in, eventually, like the non-acidic soil below it will kind of mix, and it won't be a good environment for the blueberries. So you really want to keep them in a solely acidic environment.
Well, if you add sulfate ammonia every year, or sulfur every year, or something like that, that helps.
Okay.
That'll keep the acidity high. I mean, we talked to the farmer guys at the farmers markets about how they grow their blueberries. So they say they throw a whole bunch of sulfur in the field the year before to make it acidic, lowers the pH, and they also put acid in their irrigation water. So that makes it harder for for a homeowner. I mean, I planted emerald in my garden once, and I was throwing sulfur on it, and this burned the heck out of it. So because the instructions they have on those containers of sulfur is how many pounds per acre. I'm going, okay, so I do 1 plant. So I tried to do 1 plant, I just burned it up. So it's that's hard to figure out how to do it right.
What time of year would be the right time to add all these amendments and change the soil over there?
Anytime. Well, when they're dormant, of course, it's easier to change the dirt without shocking them. So if your blueberries, they usually go somewhat dormant at the end of December. So if you do it right at that time, that would cause the least amount of trouble. They're pretty resilient. We've had stems break off with a single root left on them, and we'll stick them in dirt and they grow. They're apparently they grow from cuttings. We'll have to maybe start doing our own on that and see how well we do.
So right now, could you switch out your soil, or is it probably too much?
Well, right now most of them are like this. They're in production already. So, yeah.
Why couldn't you just top dress them with pine needles or pine shade?
Well, eventually you get too many dead roots in the ground, and it's hard to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Now, since they do root on through their stems, you potentially can just keep piling the dirt higher and higher around them.
Right.
As long as the plant can handle that root out of its stems, yeah, you can just keep raising the dirt, and that just keeps fresh soil around them.
We use pine mulch to keep it acidic.
Yeah, any organic matter breaking down will make the soil more acidic. Yes.
Do blueberries transplant well? I have a friend who's moving and has offered me blueberry plants. Can I take them from her yard, move them to my yard safely? Even if it's not the optimal time of year?
They don't seem to be that sensitive to that, to messing with their roots, so you can try it, yeah. Probably have success. They're not that delicate, because we've fooled around with them a lot. Like, the problem we have is all the growers don't use very good soil. It's kind of a wood shaving, sand and perlite mix that we don't like. So when I used to grow a lot of blueberry plants in the bigger containers, I would experiment with taking this dirt off totally, just shaking it off, pulling it off when the plants were dormant, and then put them in our soil to see if that would make much difference. For this size root ball, it didn't seem to at all, so we don't do it anymore. But on the bigger root balls, we know that if you get a blueberry plant in a 5-gallon bucket and it's not the right soil, essentially no one puts them in the right soil. So if you get one from any other grower in the wrong soil, we know if it's bigger than 2 gallons or larger, it's going to kill it. It seems to die within 3 years of when you get it. This plant just turns yellow. You can't make it recover because that rotting bark that they use to grow them. I mean, even this grower tells their own customers to put them in bark and peat instead of using volcanic rock or perlite as the permanent aeration material. They're using bark to do that, and bark just turns into sludge within 3 years, and plant goes, but they don't seem to get it either, so. But that size root ball, only less than 4 inches across, doesn't seem to cause enough trouble to worry about. You can always wash some of that off if you want to play it safe.
Because this is not your stuff. This is
Right.
growers.
Yeah. If we leave them in there, it kills them within a couple of years.
Does the West Coast have a low bush?
We don't have any low bushes that we haven't got any low bushes. There may be a low bush in the south, but most of the low bushes are northern.
Right.
So there's a northern low bush and a northern high bush blueberry, and of course, I guess half of Canada and the northern parts of the U.S. are all low bush blueberries.
Yeah.
So I just planted some of these that I got of raspberries and blackberries. You know, should I dig them up and take that soil off? No.
No need.
They'll be alright.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about those in a second. They move out of that soil. Blueberries are stuck in one spot, but the other berries tend to run.
Gotcha.
Okay, any questions on blueberries? Now, if you're pollinating with them, you know, the closer the better as far as the bees are concerned, but we haven't seen have much trouble because we noticed that the hummingbirds like to visit the flowers too, and they don't seem to have any problems with distance. They'll go from one part of your yard to the other side, back and forth, back and forth. So if the hummingbirds can pollinate, then the plants don't have to be that close together. But we've grown like 2 blueberries in the same pot before also, just to do it that way. And that seems to be fine too.
You know, actually, I have another question then.
Sure.
We've got a terrible problem with birds going after blueberries, so I'm trying to put netting over, but then if I need them to be pollinated and the birds can't get to them to cross-pollinate them, what do I do? What's the best way to?
Well, generally, the flowers are open well a month before the berries arrive, so.
So it shouldn't matter.
Right. Now, certainly the birds are a problem, so what we found to be the most effective by far is the blow-up snakes. And I didn't bring one over here. We have some on the shelf back there, but they make fake snakes, or did we sell out? We might have sold out this week. But they make a plastic snake, same material as beach balls. You blow it up and it's this snake that's this long, and they hang it on your bush. And the birds hate that.
Okay.
I mean, we used it first, tried it back in the 1980s. I had 20 fig trees, and it sounded like an aviary out there all fall, just terrible. So I was at Disneyland, and they had these realistic rubber snakes in those days. So I hung one on my fig tree, did not hear a bird for 2 weeks. It took them 2 weeks to become unafraid of that thing. So we use that on our blueberry plants. Works pretty good for a couple of weeks also. If you keep moving it from plant to plant, that keeps them on guard a little bit longer. But you get at least 2 weeks out of that one. And then the mylar tape, that real reflective tape, or a CD disc can work about the same length of time. We tried the scarecrow owl. They lost their fear of that in 2 days. And the peregrine falcon didn't work at all. They can tell that's not real. So that's your options. I mean, here at the nursery, our outdoor cats, the birds stay away. They know not to come down in the nursery with our cats here. Yes.
What's the flowering period from the high bush, the ones you mentioned?
Well, heaviest in late winter, but they'll bloom all the way into fall. It just gets lighter and lighter and lighter. So they have that one big explosion in late winter and then one big explosion of the fruit in mid-spring. And then it just kind of just fizzles out into fall. I mean, you can almost pick, if you have a lot of blueberry plants, you can go out there any day of the year and pick blueberries. So. Okay, so then we have what are called the brambleberries. And those are blackberries and raspberries and everything in between. So most of the berries, blackberries and raspberries sell aren't just blackberries. Most of them are hybrids. So some were down the road, someone crossed these. Now blackberries are native throughout the northern hemisphere, and raspberries are native to Europe. And part of Western Asia. So when they cross blackberries and raspberries, they got, I think, loganberries and boysenberries are all hybrids between the two. And most of the blackberries you sell aren't pure blackberry. They've always got a little bit of raspberry in them. I think the raspberry makes them a little bit mellower, rounded flavor. But and they all kind of grow the same. So what they do, typical blackberry reserve plant, is that all summer long they grow these canes. They can grow 6 foot, well, between 4 foot and say 10 foot long, and then just one long stem is normal for them. And then the next spring, that one long stem branches sideways, blooms, and makes their crop. So that's the normal way for these plants to make fruit. They call that floricane berries. So the stems that grew last summer bloom and fruit the next spring, and then after they finish fruiting, they die. At the same time, the plant is growing new stems. You can see these starts on the ground here. These will become the new stems this coming summer, and then they'll fruit next year and die too. So they're always making new stems. They fruit late spring, summer, and then they die, but they're being replaced constantly by new stems or runners or canes, if you want to call them that. This is a boysenberry here. Boysenberry is what made Knott's Berries Farm prominent, because it is perhaps the best tasting of the berry plants. Terrible shelf life, so you can't find them in any store or anything. Even farmers markets, hard to find them nowadays. But wonderful tasting berry overall. Big. I mean, boysenberries are a good 2-inch berry, and they are really good to eat. Now the difference between boysenberries and raspberries, and blackberries and raspberries, so boysenberry is closer to the blackberry than a raspberry, is that when you pick the fruit, so the fruit is kind of a berry, which is a group of smaller berries all stuck together. When you pick a raspberry and you pull it off the stem, all the seeds are stuck on the stem. On a blackberry, you pull the fruit off the stem, all the seeds are in the berries themselves that you're eating. So with boysenberries and blackberries, you get these little things you got to pick out of your teeth with toothpicks. With the raspberries, you don't. But that's the main difference. So there are black raspberries, and the only difference between that and the blackberry is the seeds are stuck on the stem. They don't come off with the fruit. So we sell one black raspberry, which is stronger. So the blackberries tend to be, the blacker the berry, the stronger the flavor tends to be. The redder, the milder, and the yellow ones are real mild. Now, all these caneberries, brambleberries, need some kind of chill in the winter to make fruit. So not all of them. Now, Sunset Magazine has listed every single blackberry does well in Orange County. We thought they were right, so we were buying in all these different blackberries, and we found out, heck, a lot of them don't produce a thing here. So we know that that's not right. They need some kind of chill. So we kind of narrowed our choices down over the years on these berries. Now, we just talked about the floricane berries. There is also primo cane. And primo cane berries, what they do is the stems that grow this spring will fruit this fall. A lot of these plants do that a little bit. Some plants do it a lot. So they'll grow a stem this spring, and by fall it's producing, by August, September, October, they're producing berries on those stems. So those plants, really, in the wintertime, you just cut them down in the ground and let them regrow from the dirt. So what all these plants do is, if this is the ground level here, the stems are sticking like this, the roots are underground. The new stems come right off the roots, and they keep spreading. So one problem with these too, a lot of people want to keep them in pots, is that they'll make little colonies in your yard. Typically, within a few years, one plant can spread about 5 foot to 10 foot across. Now, if you have a big yard, it's not that big a deal. A friend of mine has a whole slope covered with blackberries and raspberries, and if they're getting too close to his fruit trees, he just pulls the stems out of the ground now and then. But if you've got bushes and flowers around here, you know, it gets mixed all up and it's hard to deal with it at that point. But if you just have a big bare area in your garden, it's not that big a deal. Or some customers have little cutouts in their sidewalks where they plant these and they just stay within that cutout. Or you can put root barriers around them to keep them contained too.
So that's the primal cane that does that? Or
Both floricanes and the primo canes do that. So the difference between these is only at the time of bearing. So the primo cane, as the cane grows, it starts flowering that same year. The floricanes wait till the second year to make fruit. And there are some plants, well, most of the primo canes will actually act like floricanes too. So a primo cane berry, when it makes the stem that goes out this long, it'll make fruit starting at the end, work its way backwards, and then the next spring it'll finish up all the way down to the base.
So, as far I'm a little confused, like when you cut back or tame them or whatever, what's the different strategy for each one?
Well, blackberries,
For the
now,
floricane versus primo cane, is there a different strategy?
yeah, the primo cane berries you can just cut them down the ground with them. You don't need to save the stems because they've already made a big crop. Whereas the floricane, you've got to save your stems that haven't borne fruit yet, or else you don't get nothing.
Right.
So on the floricane, you know, as it grows that really long, do you at some point just cut it off? Or just let it keep growing?
Yeah, so in the old days we just let them grow along, and some of them get 8-10 foot long. Nowadays, what they do on most farms is as a cane is growing, every 2 feet they'll pinch the tip off, and it'll multiply and make more tips. And then it may only get to about 5 foot long, but they'll have more stems to play with the next spring. So they do it that way. They keep pinching them, but the old-fashioned method would just let it go and to make one long. And then they say you cut it back to about 6 or 8 foot because they only produce so many berries off the end of that stem. They won't go all the way to the base if it's 10 foot long. So keep 6 or 8 foot. Now, a lot of these blackberries and raspberries we carry do not need support. Boysenberries generally are vine-like, and if you want to keep them more contained, put them on a support like a few stakes or a wire fence or something. But a lot of blackberries and raspberries generally are upright enough that they don't need support.
So related to that, some of the branches get kind of long, and they're kind of, you know, below the top of the pot line. Is that okay, or is it better to prop them up so
okay.
they get more sun? Or?
Well, they need a lot of sun to ripen the berries, so as long as the leaves are in the sunlight. So among berries, I mean, I've grown blueberries in half shade before, and they come out fine, and I've grown strawberries in half shade before, they come out fine. You grow any of the cane berries in half shade, no, they don't come out very good. They need more sunlight because they don't have any hang time. So most of these brambleberries, you pick them the day they're ripe, and the next day they're overripe and it's too late. Whereas blueberries, if they're not ripe one day, you can wait a few days. They can still sweeten up. But these guys don't have that opportunity, so they have to be in more light. I remember I stuck some raspberries once in exactly half a day of sun, and they just they're always tart. I couldn't get them to be sweet at all. So they needed more than half a day to get it sweet.
Can you grow raspberries in a pot, like a wet down pot?
Yeah, so a lot of our customers grow them in containers. This one's kind of small. This pot here is decent. This is a raspberry plant. So this size, which is about a 15-inch pot, is decent size. You can get them going for about 5 years and something like this. They tend to multiply so fast that it gets root bound in there after a while, and but these guys are real easy. You just dump it out, save 1/4 of it, put it back in the same pot, throw out new dirt, and away they go for another 5 years. It's real simple. You pull a stem out, it's got roots on it, you just put it back in. Cut it back, put it back in, and it multiplies like a weed. So, yes.
I've got a couple of boysenberries, the leaves are scarlet on them. What did I do wrong with them?
Could be fertilizer, but that could just be last year's leaves, too. I mean, I know the blueberries in my yard in the fall, half of them they turn bright red
Yeah.
when they drop. The other half stay green. And I think the berries pretty much leaf stay. Now, one thing about boysenberry, the reason why boysenberry is grown here is that it can't handle Oregon rain. So the boysenberry was actually developed by Mr. Boysen up in Northern California, and it wasn't working. Too wet up there. So Mr. Knotts was told about them by the Ag Department. He brought them down to Southern California, and they do much better here because we have so much rain. So that plant is real rain prone to leaf spotting and all kinds of stuff. So if we get too much rain on our blackberries, the lolly blackberry, which does well here, and the boysenberry, then they get all these leaf spots, turn red and yellow and black. The leaves fall off, but they regrow when the weather dries up. Whereas some of the berries that are grown up in Oregon, real resistant to leaf diseases because they have to be.
How
But-
often do you water?
Oh, keep them wet. Nature, all these guys sit near rivers, so they're used to being wet. Good drainage, wet soil. So our acid mix works on all of them real well.
I can't always tell at the end of the season, they're so stickery and we don't wanna deal with them, what's old and what's new on the canes and how far should they be cut back. And right now I have some of last year's leaves over in a corner that have rust on them. And that was all, but I'm not sure all the time what.
Right. Well, once the
How to
stem,
find the right.
once you have this center stem, and they branched out and bloom fruit on the end, they're done. So this whole thing I can cut off. This one's done.
Okay, but at the end of the season, sometimes you don't, if you've got all these, some of them might be new, some of them.
Well, the ones that are still alive, you cut into them, they're still green inside. Everything else is brown. Because they died before fall started.
And then I've got them sprouting up all over the job.
Right.
I know they're new.
Are Oala berries, are they similar to, are they in the boysenberry class, or are there more blackberries?
Well, they're closer to blackberry, the olali berry, but they still have some raspberry in them. So.
Are they a floricane or?
That's floricane. So the berries that we sell. Well, the most famous one is Boysen. So the boysenberry. Now this year we only got the spiny ones, and there are spineless versions of it, but the problem with boysenberry, and this, I believe this is the boysenberry also, is that even if you get the non-thorny ones, they usually revert back to thorny. So it doesn't really help. We've gotten in a lot of thornless ones, they already have thorns on them, so we just said, okay, let's just go with the thorny ones. The literature says the thorny ones are more productive and taste better than the thornless ones. So why grow the thornless ones? It doesn't seem to stop the kids from picking them. But they are really, that's probably one of the spiniest of the berries is the boysenberry. Rose-like thorns on them, so. Then the other one that's real famous in Orange County is Olali. Blackberry, which is oh, it's another boysenberry. This is the lolly blackberry, so it looks more like a blackberry leaf. The berries are fairly large also, almost as big as boysen. They're very close to boysenberry. This one's got fruit forming. So that one's also very good around here. Some of the new ones out. Now the University of Oklahoma's been doing a lot of research. Generally, berries, as far as berry quality goes, the berries themselves do better with Oregon weather. Oregon, Washington, where it just stays cool and moist all the way into summer. That's what they prefer. Oklahoma is not that way. Oklahoma gets really hot and nasty in the spring. So they wanted to make berries that were better for Oklahoma. So they've done a lot of berry research. Excuse me, this is Arkansas. Arkansas has done a lot of research. They wanted to get berries that did better for their own use. But they found out that every single one they were making, they bring to California, it does better here. Because it's just cooler in the spring than it is in Arkansas. So we get a lot of the new berries came out from the University of Arkansas. This is one of them, Primark Freedom. Now, 2 years ago we had Primark. That was their first primo cane blackberry. And Arkansas is making a berry that was, they said, 5 ounces in size, 5 grams in size. I think it's grams that they're using. But in California, the same berry was almost double the size. So they were doing much better here. This is the thornless version of that. And it's a primo cane. So it doesn't need, in theory, doesn't need a winter to produce fruit because it's all on new growth. And what we've seen on these is they've produced their main crop from August to November. Well, actually, we were eating in December. And it's an upright plant, real thick stems. They just, you don't need any support. They just kind of go up about 5 or 6 foot high, about 8 foot wide. Just this nice umbrella form. And you pick berries all summer and fall. Now this is the floricane production on this plant. So it produced fruit on this branch last fall, and then this stem here, which is made last year, is going to make fruit this year. Generally, the fruit in the fall is better quality than the fruit in the spring on these primo cane types.
What's the name of this
Oh,
one?
this is Prime Freedom. I think it's Prime Arc Freedom for Arkansas. And no thorn. This is the only thornless blackberry that we think will do well here. There might be others out there, but we've given up on a lot of them. Like this is Triple Crown, which was promoted to do well in Southern California. It hasn't made a single berry for us yet. So we carried them because they said it would do well here, and our customer says, there's nothing, it's not making anything. And this one seems to need a winter, but it is thornless. But not making any fruit, so that didn't help. So we've given up on a lot of the thornless blackberries because they went fruit here. This Primark seems to be one that will. Primark Freedom. Another plant out of the University of Arkansas, is Kiowa. And this has produced here, as have the Prime series. They have another one that we got in called Osage, but Osage, they said, needs more cold. So we're not pushing that one. We still have a few plants around, though. We wanted to see if it would, but may not. But this Kiowa is supposed to be the largest of the blackberries. It's supposed to be 3 inches. So far in a pot, they haven't exceeded 2, but I would think in the ground under perfect conditions, you can get 3 inches out of it. So it's a big berry, Kiowa.
And the flavor remains when they get that big? Or does the flavor dilute? Or is it...
So far, we haven't eaten that big a one. They were okay.
Yeah.
Not, I would say not as good as Old Lolly and Boysenberry, but they're fine. They're still good berries. On the raspberries, the one we've been growing over the years, or pushing over the years, is Baba. Baba was actually found, now of course they're not supposed to be native here, the raspberries, but this was found growing along someone's property in Idlewild. So Baba has been the one. We're out of stock now. Hopefully I'll find a grower with them this spring somewhere. But it's interesting. I grew Baba back in the 1980s when it was first introduced. It was totally gone off the market for 20 years. And then it was brought back about 5 years ago. So we don't know what happened to it because when I grew Baba in the 80s, it was a floricane raspberry. When they brought it back in the 5 years ago they said, oh, this is a primo cane raspberry. It's like, huh? How'd that happen? So I'm not sure if they're selling the same plant still. If the Baba we sell now is the same as the Baba. Gertrude Milliken was the finder of this, and her grandkids called her Baba, so that's the name of that. But that has been our best-selling raspberry. I haven't liked the other raspberries out there. Now there's some yellow ones that have done okay. Fall gold we sell occasionally. We've ordered other gold ones to try, but we never seem to be able to get them. So Ann is another yellow one that we keep ordering and it doesn't come in. And now and then we'll have something called Rosanna. This one's pretty nice. Rosanna is a primo cane raspberry from Sicily, I believe. But it became a favorite in Minnesota because in Minnesota it's so cold there that all the stems freeze off in the winter. So the only things that work there are the primo canes. Comes out of the ground and fruits by summer. So I don't have any Rosannas right now. I think that's my mother plant, that particular raspberry there. So we divide it now and then, make new plants. Should have some new plants by summer. I have another plant that we're ready to divide. So, but that was given to me by a lady up in the hills, a member of the Rare Fruit Growers, back in the 80s, and we played around with it a little bit. Said, "Oh, this is pretty good." It's not as big. The Brambleberry is the largest raspberry we've ever seen. There was another one out in the market back in the 80s called Oregon 1030, which was renamed the California Red Raspberry by Nurseryland back in those days. And that was one that was a reject from Oregon, wouldn't do up there at all, but it did wonderful here. And that was the best raspberry I'd ever grown, but that is gone. Can't find any remnants of the Oregon 1030 or California Red Raspberry. So, but that was the best one I'd ever grown. Slightly smaller berry than Baba, but much heavier. It's like there's much more meat in there. Something about it. We heard that what happened to them is they picked up a virus and became non-productive, and so they don't grow anymore. Any questions on these?
Can you go back and mark the blackberries, whether floricane or primo cane? Thank you.
They're claiming the Babas are primo cane. This is primo cane. That's primo cane. And we've tried the heritage raspberry, which everybody sells, and that thing comes down. I don't know, the fruit on that is like dry. I don't know what's wrong with that one. Just not very good fruit at all.
I kind of planted like a variety of these things along my fence. So some of them are primo cane, some of them are floricane. They're probably like 2 feet apart. Is that way too close? Like they're just gonna get all.
Well, they all multiply like crazy, so they all end up being real close together. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
But we found when we used to grow them in pots, if I put a thornless blackberry in with the thorny one just takes over the pot real fast. It just, the thornless ones don't seem to have a chance when you're in competition. So. Oh, one other note about these, all the blackberries and raspberries, if you really look at your berries carefully when you pick them, there are bugs in there. I mean, back in the 80s, we'd soak them in water, try to get the bugs out, little thrips, things running around the berries and cluster. And so I would just close my eyes and eat them. It's just too much pain to get the little insects out. But that's why we sell Captain Jacks. So what was going on is that thrips like to live in and eat inside the berries. And when you pick them, you see these little thrips running around. Unless you really, really thoroughly wash them, you just can't get them out. But if you spray them with Captain Jacks, which is organic, that kills the thrips. So you don't have to worry about those little things in your fruit. Yes.
If something, you really have to, when you're doing boysenberries, you pick it and you look at where the little white inside is, and you've got to make sure nothing's moving. What is in there? Is it a maggot?
Don't know.
It
I
becomes
haven't noticed that one
a little
before.
tiny fly. It's freaky.
Well, whatever it is, this
You have
should
to
take
look
care
at
of it
every
too.
single one of them because you never know, but it doesn't seem to do it unless the thing's a little bit too ripe.
At what stage would you spray the Captain Jacks?
Don't know.
Is that spinosad?
Yeah, spinosad. Let's see what they list on berries here. For strawberries, you can apply up to the 1 day within a harvest. For blackberries and raspberries, within 3 days of harvest. I don't think you have to worry about that much. This stuff is, yeah, and they feed this to mammals for bug control on mammals, so. Yeah, they see on the bush and cane berries, blackberries, boysenberries, elderberries, gooseberries, kills armyworms, fireworms, fruit flies, so that might be what's in there, the fruit fly. Fruit worms, might be a fruit worm, leaf rollers, loopers, and thrips. So it kills all those pests that can get into around the berries. Yes?
What about mealybugs? Our blackberries end up with mealybugs.
Your best thing you can use is oil. And control the ants. Usually ants and mealybugs are associated with each other, so put this stuff out for the ants so they don't bring the mealybugs over. But a lot of times the mealybugs are living in the roots over winter. So, yes.
The nice thing I found about blackberries is I planted the boysenberries and they became thorny. And blackberry, the rats don't eat them because I guess the thorns. Rats eat everything else except my guavas. They don't like guavas, it seems. But they'll eat out everything else. They won't eat that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. When I grew boysenberries, the rats wouldn't touch me. There must be the thorns.
Otherwise, when my grandchildren come over and pick all these things, I just don't tell them there might be bugs in them, and they love them.
Little ears here.
Yeah, close your ears.
Okay, any other questions today? I think we covered just about everything. So I still have most of these out. There are 2 types of blueberries left. We'll see if we can get some new ones from Oregon.
Do
This is
goji
a-
berries fit into this program somewhere?
Pardon?
Goji berries, do
I have a few around. We haven't been happy with production of goji berries at all. I don't know, I've had some plants in my yard and we just can't get some produce well and some don't. We're not sure what's going on there. Plus, last few years they've gotten really bad in certain locations. So I think they are from way inland in China and Asia. So it must be like Utah, the humidity there. So they certainly, some years, I mean, the mildew just really is bad on them. Plus, they're not that tasty. But we still carry them. I mean, we still get them now and then. So we have a few plants around. Yes.
Do you ever talk about grapes?
Yeah, we'll probably have a grape class in a couple months. Our grape plants just aren't, our grape plants right now are this big. I don't have that much to sell, so we will hold off until our new crop is ready, but we have a lot of different kinds growing. Yeah, so that'll come up soon. And I was going to tell you, my avocado supplier told us last year that they were booked for the entire year. So I contacted for mangoes and chamois, and somebody said, "Well, here's some avocados you can buy." So anyway, we should have avocados in here. Well, actually, the crop they said will be ready before summer, but so we'll have something here in the nursery before summer this year, even though they told us last year, no way. They're totally booked.
It never reads.
I may not be able to get reed from this year. When we signed a contract last year with them, it was for reeds for 2019. They were booked for the entire year. They said that with the end of the drought last year and the fires this year, they're and the orchards just clean them out. But what happens is they have a contract to grow 1,000 avocados for this orchard. They always grow 1,010. They just don't grow 1,000. So what they've got are some extras from the contracts that they can sell us currently.
If you have kind of a shady spot to start, and those avocados then grow and get into more sun, that's going to be okay.
Yeah, they start in jungles.
Yeah.
So the babies are down deep in the shade. They can handle that.
Reed will get 20 feet tall.
They can.
Are you going to have some dwarf avocados?
There are no quote dwarf. Well, what they found. So University of California found this out on Gwen's because they used to promote Gwen as a dwarf avocado. As they found out it's just production keeping them small. What they did is for 5 years they cut off all the flowers. Said the Gwens grew 20 foot. If they let them fruit, they would hang out under 10 feet. But if they didn't let them fruit, they would go to 20 real fast. So when they don't make fruit, they grow 3 feet a year. When they're making fruit, they don't grow an inch. So that's the key, is keeping them productive. Make sure they produce, or you trim them. You know, on the years they grow, you trim them back. So that seems to be it. All of these short avocado trees are the heavy producing ones. Unless you get little cotto, which is almost vine-like in growth, doesn't have any trunk strength at all.
Are the reeds a little more rat-proof because they have such thicker skin, or not really? The rats will just get
Well, it seems raccoons are more apt to eat them than the rats, but I don't know. Yeah, it's true. The rats will eat them now and then. Doesn't matter which one it is.
Okay. So when you're seeing the scrapings out of them, it's probably more raccoon.
No, raccoons actually knock them off the tree.
Yeah.
I was woken up one night in my backyard. We looked out the window, and my bacon avocado tree was doing this. And there was a raccoon sitting on the top of my block wall, whipping that trunk around, trying to knock the fruit off it.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was a strong raccoon.
Don't mess with that
I
guy.
like our logo.
They knock them off, then a couple days later when they're ripe, they come back and eat it. Anyway, that's all for class. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Very good.
We have YouTube videos, so there's something called on YouTube. Go to Gary's Best Gardening. We have classes on there, and there's 2 soul classes on there.
As soon as he said that, it was like, oh my God.
You can learn about soul now. We're going to get on our website about soul. We totally do things different than any other nursery that I know. It's, we'll tell you that you put compost down, you kill everything.
Yeah, I looked on your website, but I wasn't sure if you kind of explain like blueberries, what's the best way to select that pot or in soil, or what's the next to do, all that.
They like our ass, but they don't like anything.